Okay, so let's do a little bit more. We have simple movements, gliding motion, angular, circumduction, rotation. We'll talk about that. Okay, synovial fluid and synovial joints, gliding movement. One really good example of a gliding joint is the joint that connects between the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. And it's this one for the upper extremities. And we said it was the sacroiliac for the lower extremities. What was this one called again? It was between the sternum and the clavicle, right? So it's called the sternoclavicular joint. So I have two joints that connect between the axial and appendicular, one for the arms and one for the legs. The one for the arm is sternoclavicular. The one for the legs is sacroiliac. And then flexion extension. So flexion extension, it's a really good one. It's a monaxial. It's a hinge joint like the elbow. What's the elbow also known as? It's the humeral ulnar joint. How do I know it's the ulnar, not the radial? Because the ulna also makes the ole crayon, right? So it makes the point of the elbow. So I know that I touch it and you can feel that they're connected. So the humeral ulnar joint is also the elbow joint. It allows for flexion and extension. What is the definition of flexion and extension? Well, watch the angle. For flexion, the angle of the joint decreases. For extension, the angle of the joint increases. Hyperextension. I know I can't do this, but if you've seen people that are very flexible or lax in their joints, they have what we call double jointed. We call them double jointed. It's not true. It's not that it's double jointed. It's that they're really, really flexible in it. So they can go beyond the 180 degrees that you're usually limited to. So flexion, extension, and hyperextension. So again, flexion, extension, hyperextension. You can do it in the neck. You can do it in the elbow, in the shoulder. You can go forward, backward, in the hip, in the knees. So even in the feet. So if you look at this, extension of the foot. Well, we'll talk about this later in concepts. So flexion of the hand, going toward the palm. Technically, flexion of the foot is going toward the sole. So it's the copycat, right? The palm and the sole are matched. So anything toward the palm and anything toward the sole is technically flexion. So these muscles back here are flexors. These muscles up here are flexors because they're bringing it toward. If I go in the opposite direction of the palm and the opposite direction of the sole, it's called extension. It's called extension. But the foot, they make it more complicated. They call this dorsiflexion and they call this plantar flexion. So how do you know which one is extension and flexion? Look at the sole of the foot. If it's towards it, it's flexion. If it's away, it's extension. So these muscles in the front of the lower leg are the extensors. The ones on the back are the flexors. That's for future use.